Good Friday afternoon. Victor's listening back
Good
5 seconds.
Friday afternoon.
Well, that was rude. I'm assuming you hear me. There you are.
I think we're having difficulties, or I am having difficulties. I don't know.
Think it might be you. Because you heard me.
Darin?
Yes, I'm here. And I'm assuming people still hear me. If you hear me, go ahead and type, I can hear you in the chat. Please. I'm running on some underpowered hardware today, testing some things. And probably wasn't the smartest of things to do live. But hey, that's why we do this.
Probably wasn't the smartest of things to do live. But hey, that's why we do this. Probably wasn't the smartest of things.
Okay, well, I know you can hear me. So Victor can't hear me. This is weird. Okay, so he'll come back in a minute, maybe. I hope it's him, because YouTube has me. Anyway, hey, by the way, thanks, Ozan. That works. Okay, cool. I'm really hoping it's Victor and not me. So this is a great way to start off the Friday after Thanksgiving if you're in the U.S. And we'll see if Victor pops back in here. I've been noticing his stuff was looking a little weird. There he is. Okay, so now he is back in. Hello, Victor. Victor is... Are you back? You're muted.
Yes, I was muted. Yes. Hey, praise the Lord.
Okay, good. You're good now?
Yeah, I don't know. I had to restart 17 times.
I was hoping it was you and not me because I knew I was underpowered. So it's one of those days.
I don't like being me. It's better to be you. When blame is to be shared.
Oh, okay. Blame dumped on. Yeah, it's much better to just dump the blame on me. Hi, by the way, my name is Darren. This over here is Victor, and we are the co-host of a podcast called... thanks, Marco. We are the co-host of a podcast called DevOps Paradox, and on Fridays we do this show called DevOps Paradox Live. And now it's in... now it's in stereo. Okay, that's actually an interesting question. So you hear both of us, but is one of us on one side and one of us on the other? Serious question. I'm curious to see what's happening there, because we should be both in the center. But anyway, it's been one of those days already, and now we're here. So guess what time it is? Do you have a drink? Do you have to go to the fridge?
No, I have Coke.
Okay, you have Coke.
Beverage.
That's good.
No.
That's good. So since you have no alcohol, that means you're probably working tonight.
No, I'm gonna after this I'm finished. This was the most horrible. This was the most horrible week, and I just want to finish with it officially.
Be done.
Yes.
Be done.
It's one of those weeks when you spend extra hours without producing any result because you're spending hours or days for something that turned out to be a wrong version of Istio-CTL, or Istio-Cattle, or those silly things that you want to shoot yourself, and you cannot tell anybody, hey, what did you do? Nothing, because actually I had the wrong version of CLI, for example.
And we'll talk about that. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. By the way, speaking of versions of things, this week's podcast. Everybody's already listened to this week's podcast, right? Episode 83 was with Thomas Vitale about using Spring and doing cloud native things. He is an author for Manning, or he's writing a book that's being published by Manning, I should say. And if you use I don't have the code in front of me, but Pod Paradox 20, and you can check the show notes in 83, you can get 40% off anything of Manning, not just that book, but anything. So if you use that Pod Paradox 20, we don't get any money for that. That's not like an affiliate code or anything. It's just they give us a code that we can pass on to you. So if you want to save 40% all the time at Manning, Pod Paradox, the number 2 and the number 0, please. Again, we don't make any money on that. So
we don't make any money on any of the things we're doing. Or close to not any money.
Close to nothing. Yes, that's so. When you sell the books, when we sell the courses, there's some cash there. Some, meaning not even real money to buy real soda. It's money that can buy, non-branded soda. It's that level. Now, see, Victor makes more. He actually gets the real Coca-Cola. I get.
Yeah, kind of. Yours is sugar-free, right?
Well, mine's just sparkling water. So.
Yeah, they didn't. It's a cheap version that didn't even put taste inside, right?
Didn't put taste in it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cheaper.
Okay. Boy, this is getting off to a really great start today. All right, so let's get into some of the news. There will be some fallout from KubeCon, not a lot, but I saw this one pop up earlier this week, and now I've got to share a different screen. Hang on just a second. This was from the guys at Octopus. Octopus does, they have a deploy tool, and we're not going to get into that, but they had this reading list, and I thought this was very interesting. It's basically almost a choose your own adventure, so let's go ahead and get down to you can read all the words don't really matter. What should I learn? And then you can go through and follow the flow here, and then it drops you into a book. Neat. Right?
Yeah, just go from left to right, read it all.
Man, I wouldn't start with Goldratt. I mean, Goal is good, but man, if I'm going to start anywhere, start at Phoenix Project.
Oh yeah,
just don't start with Accelerate. Your head will explode. Even the old continuous delivery book from Jazz and Dave, don't start there either. That thing will break your leg. I have the physical copy of that book. It's heavy. I would start with Phoenix Project, maybe read the 5 Dysfunctional from Lencioni. Those are the 2 I'd probably read first, because those are really good, and then get into whichever ones you want to go to from there. I don't care who you are. That's where you should start. But don't ever start with Goldratt. That's just like, no, don't do it. Is that all I want to say about this? By the way, Octopus, thanks for doing this. This is really good. And actually, you can click on the diagram and it'll go even larger, which is not really helpful, but sort of. Oh, and Team Topologies is on there as well. We've had a number of people talk about Team Topologies. I still haven't read it yet. But it's sort of where they talk about, are you a database specialist? But there's no CJ Date or Joe Selko books there, which is sort of weird. For those of you who aren't into SQL and you don't know those 2 names, it's okay, because those were the 2 big authors back in the 80s. But doesn't matter. And Victor's bored. Okay, let's moving on. Let's go to one that Victor brought up. BBC going serverless. Serverless.
Yeah. I mean, normally I just skim through it because, okay, so another company going serverless. So what's the big deal? And by scanning through it, I saw the number 2,000 functions. That's just, to me, that's just silly. Kind of, are you really gaining benefits from managing 2,000 functions? And BBC is big, but it's not Google scale. I can tell you that in advance. We're not talking about that scale.
Well, it depends. So let me take the counter on that. Let's assume that they are correct. I'm going to take that argument for a minute. How is 2,000 functions, if I've done all my automation correctly, how is 2,000 functions any different than 2,000 methods in a monolith, or 500 spread across 4 monoliths?
Well, because I don't believe that you can use apply to your whole system functions as a valid way to establish boundaries between business domains, and if you, that means that you will need to for part of it you will need to trim it or slice it further than might logically be necessary.
This comment, did you write this comment?
No, I didn't read after 2000. That's where my patience stopped.
Okay. Well, just a couple of lines extra, and I'll go ahead and read it word for word. Running a site the size of the BBC on Lambda is nothing short of an exuberant waste of government-subsidized budget. It's absolutely crazy.
Okay, that if I wrote the comment, that would be my comment, yes.
Yeah. And from Tom Snellgrove, who's an advisory manager at Accenture, I'll go ahead and I'll read this one as well. Interesting. BBC websites now entirely run with AWS Lambda functions. Forward-thinking architecture or a case of overindulgence in new tech for its own sake.
Overindulgence.
Now,
And let me tell you that now, this is from maybe, let's say, 3-4 years ago, when I was actually spent a couple of days with BBC folks, where they were trying to explain to me how streaming is a passing fad that will go away. They will never do that, and they will always have loyal, ever increasing number of people watching real television and all that stuff. And from that, jumping a couple of years later into having everything as a function, that cannot be a healthy jump. That's just skipping steps.
yeah, I think it's in, and also there's this final quote. I'm not going to read it, except for this last sentence. I hope they make their internal telemetry public. Going back to, 2000. So if you don't read anything else in this article from InfoQ, and the link for this is down in the description or in the show notes, just sort of look at each of these quote call-outs. They're asking very interesting questions. I agree with you that going straight to 2000 seems weird. Would I be scratching my head of, hey, we've got 100 that are taking care of these really little, excuse me, they may not be little, but these taking care of these specific functions that we need? That would be completely logical, right? We've talked about where where functions as a service really shine, which is batch type things, right?
Yeah.
Scheduled, cronnish type things. They may also be very good in a few of these things, but 2000?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to trash kind of functions are bad. They're not bad. It's just that there is no way that anybody would convince me that today, maybe in the future, today, the whole system can be functions, and especially not something that's tied to AWS without escape function.
Yeah. Now, something Vladislav brought up, which I wasn't thinking about, don't underestimate their streaming services. So if you just think just BBC, that's one thing. If you think just the website, that's one thing. And I have not read this whole blog post, which we should do, but we're not going to do it today. But this phrase here, half of the website is now rendered serverlessly with Lambda. I don't know why, but that's okay.
I mean, that's with the goal of avoiding the operational overhead of managing virtual machines, and now the rest is my interpretation. We are going to create a different overhead as a replacement.
We're trading overheads.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You good with this one?
Yeah.
All right.
I like the comment from Vladislav about Serbia, though.
About Serbia? Let's go and bring that one back up, because I had it there for just a second, but because I didn't get it, so let me explain it to me.
Serbian, I don't know exactly what he's referring to. Probably Serbian grammar and cases require help today.
Oh,
services.
okay. Got it. I somewhat make it somewhat makes more sense now. Okay. By the way, if you weren't around on Wednesday, the internet went down. Did you notice that?
Oh yeah, it went down in the middle of me giving a talk, or at the beginning at the conference, where first I couldn't download an image from Quai.io,
Yeah.
and then okay, something wrong with Quai.io. Excellent, let's try again. And then the service that I was using, Codefresh in this case, company service, also slowing down. And then another talk after that conference, another random things start happening. This is kind of like AWS going down. That's almost equivalent to, during Cold War, the idea of somebody kind of cutting power to your country or something like that. It's horrifying.
Yeah. Okay. But they finally got it fixed. And it turns out it was a Kinesis problem.
Yep.
So, but it also exposes that, well, that means CloudWatch is using Kinesis, DynamoDB is using Kinesis, Lambda is using Kinesis. I wonder how BBC was doing during that time. Their managed blockchain uses Kinesis. In fact, I had a friend of mine, he messaged me, he's like, man, like all my CloudWatch stuff just went nuts. And I went, yeah, it's Kinesis. It's like, yeah, no, I'm not using Kinesis, I'm using CloudWatch. I went, CloudWatch uses Kinesis.
Exactly.
So it's interesting, though, that it was the day before U.S. Thanksgiving. Not a lot to be thankful for.
It kind of, this highlights to me two things. First, the need for companies to be multi-region. Second, more important, somewhere at the top it said because US East 1, where the case happens to be the default region of a service. So if you don't specify region, that's where it's running, right?
Yep.
So this is equivalent to never use latest image when deploying containers. Same thing with the services. Always be specific. Among other things, which region you want, so that you can change.
Yep. I would almost take, with AWS specifically, and I'm sure there's a pattern for this for Azure and Google as well, I would probably not go to their primary region for my production environment. I would go to probably one of the secondary ones, what I would consider secondary, like US West.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe stick staging over in East, because typically East 1 gets all of the new services first. So if I'm wanting to exercise the new things, well, let's treat East 1 like a staging environment and nothing else. And maybe put some prod stuff over there, but it's not my primary prod. It's my failover prod. Some variant of that. But anyway, that's the first time I've seen AWS go down in a while. Whoops. Did you hang or did I hang? You there? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
I'm just muted. Yes, sorry.
You're just muted. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. Well, guess what? My browser just... Okay, there it goes. Okay. Yeah. This new... oh, I see what happened. It was trying to load some stuff. I clicked too many times. Okay, my bad. Sorry. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to this next one. I saw this today. The 11 facts about real-world container use. Now, this is from Datadog. And it's been updated, which I had not heard about this report, if you want to call it a report. But it had some very interesting data here. Kubernetes runs in half of container environments. Okay, so if it's not Kubernetes, it's Swarm,
Docker, Swarm, Mesos. ECS.
ECS, yeah.
I mean, if AWS is half of cloud, give or take,
yeah,
and let's say that ECS is half of their containers, or even more, because they're actually still pushing it more than Kubernetes, then that's a significant percentage.
Yep. Which was pretty cool. And then Nearly 90% of containers are orchestrated. Okay. Oh, Nomad. We left Nomad off the list too. Which unorchestrated means...
That means that 10% is Docker without Swarm.
Well, it's Docker, it's GCR, it may or may not be GCR. It's ACI, it's those kinds of things. All right. Let's go to the third one here, which I thought, no, I don't want to subscribe right now. Thank you, though. A majority of Kubernetes workloads are underutilizing CPU and memory. Holy cow, people, this is the reason why we have clusters. We want to be able to size the clusters up and down. If you're running in public cloud and you're not taking advantage of right-sizing your cluster, now, should you have some spare percentage around just in case? That's your call.
But that's a common thing that I'm still seeing it in majority of cases, that people guess how much memory and CPU they need. Those more advanced would kind of like do some kind of tests based on experience and what's not, and be a bit better. But very few are monitoring it continuously and changing over time, right? Maybe not over lifetime, but you realistically need to monitor your application for at least a month to get a decent idea how much memory and CPU it should use and when it should scale and all that stuff.
Yeah. And there's a lot more here. This is memory and CPU and just sort of normal stuff. They dominate their cloud platforms. Well, that's not surprising.
That's actually surprising. Not surprising. So? No. The AWS part is, to me, not surprising, but I'm surprised that they are still in such a bad shape that approximately half of the people choose not to use EKS.
Well, is it because they were already running Kubernetes?
A couple of reasons. First, because COPS appeared before EKS, and then EKS was bad for a long time, and now we can debate for a long time how good it's better definitely today, right? But still, if you look at, if you take what I'm saying quite often, that GKE is the best, and EKS is my second choice, and EKS third. That's actually reflected with the percentage of users choosing to use those. Almost nobody chooses not to use GKE in Google. Right? There is no good reason for it, right?
Right. 5, 1 and 3 AWS runs Fargate. Okay, cool. It's only because it's gotten better. Larger Kubernetes clusters contain larger nodes. Now, I thought this was interesting but not surprising.
Larger nodes are more efficient because smaller percentage of resources are not used.
Right.
Because let's say that on average you have on average 1 gig of memory that is not used by processes, right? Now on a 4 gig node, that's 25%. On 40 gigs node, that's, I don't know, 90 something, right?
Right. Well, this goes back to the old days of when virtualization was just starting. Do I want to have a bunch of 16 gig boxes, or do I want to have just a couple of 64 gig boxes?
Yes.
And it depends on what background you come from, because from my background being a DBA, back when the largest hard drives I could get my hands on was 250 meg, not gig, meg, I wanted as many spindles as I could get my hands on. But the same argument doesn't go for hardware.
But VMs are they're closer actually to containers.
Yes.
Most companies ended up having a VM per application or group of similar applications, kind of.
All right, so we'll move on from that one. Not real surprising. Networking technologies are prevalent upon daemon sets. So Calico Flannel, blah, 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 blah. It's interesting that traffic is as low as it is. but not
No,
really
I'm
at the same
actually
time.
surprised that Calico is above Istio.
Yep.
That's surprising, and definitely. But it's also a bit of a wrong graph. You don't put
Yeah.
Nginx and Calico in the same bucket.
Right. Okay, we'll move down there. This one was scary. The most popular version is 17 months old, which if we take a look at this, that's 15. It's out of support. 14 is still very large. Right? Until it falls off to about 12, this is what I would expect right here for 15 or less. What this is telling me is 13, 14, and 15. This means that the chances of these people actually being able to upgrade. They're already 6 versions behind.
That's because, to me, this probably represents what is the last supported version of Kubernetes in cloud vendors, right? People are gonna. It's horrible, but people delay upgrade for as long as they can, and internal policies do not allow them not to upgrade if they would lose support. So I don't know by heart, but I wouldn't be surprised that at the time of making this report, 1.15 was supported in AWS.
It was probably the last one. I agree with that. I actually think 15 is still supported with AWS. So
it must be 14 as well, because at least somewhere.
Right. Okay. Early adoption of service mesh.
Makes sense.
Okay. Not real surprising there. This one was strange. Half of all containers are now managed by a cloud provider and third-party registries. When we get down here, third-party registries, cloud provider registry, and then Docker Hub. Well, we know that that's a challenge now, right?
Yeah. Well, what would be very interesting for me to see if I would have a graph that shows only the registries of internally managed containers, right?
Right.
Because we all know that almost all open source, third parties, closed source, whatever, the third parties that you use are in Docker Hub, right?
Yeah.
That's not surprising. Now I'm interested how much of the Docker Hub of that bar contains container images of companies.
Right. Okay. And then the final point, and you and I sort of had a conversation around this, the most popular container images. Now, Nginx, not really surprising. Redis, and then my head started exploding. 3 data stores in a row. Actually 4, because you count Redis as a data store as well. What the heck? And then you got Mongo, right? So, okay, RabbitMQ makes sense. Kafka sort of makes sense. GitLab and Jenkins came in, cracking the top 10 together, and then Vault. So out of these 10, I'm okay with Nginx. Depending on how you're using Redis, I'm okay with that. Why Postgres? Why Elasticsearch? Why MySQL? Okay with RabbitMQ. Fine with Calico. Why Mongo? Kafka I'm okay with. GitLab and Jenkins okay with. And Vault, yeah, for sure. What are you people doing?
No,
Why?
but people do not change things every second week. MySQL, a lot of applications are using MySQL.
Yeah.
And not only a lot of applications that you are managing, but a lot of third-party apps are using MySQL.
Yeah.
So maybe you don't have MySQL as a database in your company, but third-party software that you're using has it. To be honest, I'm surprised that there are more downloads of Elasticsearch than MySQL.
Yeah. I have a problem with in general, I have a problem with stateful sets inside of Kubernetes. It's not bad. It's just I have a problem with it. Is that bad? Is it bad that I have a problem with stateful sets? The reason why I have a problem with stateful sets is because of storage.
Stateful set is the last. I mean, stateful applications are the last applications I would move to Kubernetes. I'm not saying that I wouldn't move, but they're the last. And then before moving, I would think, hey, is there any way that I would get buy-in from whomever makes those decisions to actually use a service? Kind of like, I don't know, whatever Postgres is given to you by AWS, or use it.
Yeah.
Just use it.
Yeah. So again, the link to this report will be down in the description. I thought it was very enlightening in a few scenarios. This last one was very interesting to me for numbers of reasons. But it's just, there's no way I would run an RDS in Kubernetes. Like I said, Redis, okay, depending on how I'm using it, might be fine.
Redis is a key value store more than anything. So
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Well, but I've seen some people turn it into a system of record, which that's where I get concerned about using it.
Yeah.
But okay. All right. So we'll move on from here. Enough about that. OneDev. You want to see about OneDev? This project has been out here for a while, and I had never heard of it before. It's the, as their about says, super easy, all-in-one DevOps platform. That and 50 cents will buy you a drink at the store. I did not go all the way through it. It looks interesting. It does CI builds, no agents or runners required, whatever the heck that means, because how do you do a build without some sort of worker to do the work for you? Again,
it speeds up containers and then doesn't call it agents.
Yeah. Okay. Next.
I think it just assumes that kind of agent is something that permanently runs, and that we're still in 1999.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. I'll go with that. Obviously, I'm heavily biased. Workflows, all this other stuff. Looks interesting. Issues board. Code intelligence, code discussions, pull requests. You can do everything. It's an all-in-one. How do we feel about all-in-one tools, Victor?
Depends. Generally, not very good. But on the other hand, I don't like having thousands of tools doing this one thing. I need to try it out. Maybe it will be one of the Tuesday's videos,
which we will talk more about Tuesday in a moment. Sort of in the same vein, which I believe I had heard of this before, but Backstage was open sourced by Spotify, and it's similar to what we were just seeing with OneDev. Of course, they have great animations because they don't pay their... Never mind, I won't go there. But it also has sort of that, and they're going on it sort of off of a service catalog thing. So if, hey, I want to go off and build a new thing, I can bootstrap it from the service catalog. It's like, hey, I need a new Golang microservice. Go. Off it goes. And it sets up everything for me, and then I can just use it. Again, same thing.
Yeah. Ask me, how do I feel again?
How do you feel about this?
How do I feel about doing something purely from UI, at least based on this information we have so far? Not very good.
Not very good.
But looks interesting. I'm joking. We need to try it out.
Yeah. So OneDev and Backstage both look similar-ish. I think there's some overlap, but not exactly the same. Okay. So that was Backstage. Before I go on to the next one here. Okay. So finally. Dave. Finally.
You like saying that sentence, Dave.
Well, Dave.
Okay.
Dave's one of the developers. They finally went ahead and released now GA, and along with that, even though it's been out for a little bit of time as well, they actually have a real documentation site, which shows some other things as well. So congratulations to the Copilot team to getting 1.0 out the door. Here's to a lot more. Now, if we could just figure out how to keep straight what's available to us as end users to use inside of AWS when it comes to containers. I've got Copilot. I've got light sail containers. I've got EKS. I've got EKS on Fargate. I've got just ECS. I've got
ECS on Fargate.
ECS. What's the Cartesian?
Okay. I mean, I like having different alternatives to accomplish the same objective, but that was always confusing to me. AWS goes to some extremes with number of services that are bothering since like nobody can follow up, kind of like.
Dave, if you're watching, go back to this octopus thing and create this for how you should run your containers in AWS. Right?
That's a good one.
No, I'm serious.
Yeah.
I'm not joking. It's like, hey, you just need to run a single container, light sail.
And while you read it, please include installation as well. Just installation of EKS can lead to this complexity, kind of like, hey, you want CLI, there are 3 CLIs, you want this.
Yeah, because if this branch goes down to, okay, you're going to use EKS, then it's like, okay, do you need to run multi-AZ? Do you need multi-region? Do you need stateful sets? I mean, it's going to get ugly really fast. But lightweight, Dave, lightweight. This would be a nice a decision tree. That's the word I was looking for. A decision tree to figure out, okay, if I'm running containers in AWS, what is the most efficient way for me to do it? Maybe not the most cost-efficient way, but what is the most efficient way for me just to run the containers? That would be nice. Okay. Let's get back to your earlier rant. Where is the latest tag?
Rant is not in the doc with links. This is actually very positive news.
Okay. So I'm going to pull this up here. So here's Istio Cuddle.
Here's a background story, right? I had to run Istio from one of the pipelines instead of command line, right? So image based on Istio Cuddle, excellent. I put image Istio Cuddle and then some commands running in the pipeline. Right? Easy busy. Now, since I'm testing, just kind of to see whether it works, didn't specify the tag. And then I discovered that latest doesn't exist. And that's bloody awesome. I love it. I love that there is no latest so that it forces. This is probably not intentional from the team. I'm pretty sure it's not intentional. But I love it because you cannot use latest. You cannot use latest image of Istio Cuddle. You need to be specific and say, I want this specific release, which everybody should be doing. And you have no option with Istio Cuddle. This is the first time I see somebody not having latest, and then I would like everybody not to have latest. It would be just easier. I mean, harder at the beginning, but then you get used to, yes, I need to know what I'm running.
Which is what I've always argued for. If you want to publish a latest, that's great. But that should be considered experimental and you should never use it. The best way to deal with it, though, is just don't publish it.
Exactly. So big thumbs up for this. Probably not intentional. Probably you forgot to do it. But it's good nevertheless.
And you solved your problem once you figured out which one you needed.
Yeah, that problem I solved. The problem I didn't solve is that it's irritating that I really like semantic versioning. I love it. And that means that I assume that if you don't change the major version, you're not making any incompatible changes. Whatever I have in 1.6.14 should work in 1.6.17, which I think is the latest one. Even though it's ordered by date here. 1.7, right? Anyway, you didn't change them. And I spent 2 days trying to figure out why, not 2 days, 1 day, why my canary deployments couldn't fetch metrics from Prometheus, just to realize that, hey, yes, I used one minor version earlier than normal, and everything broke. It doesn't install. It installs Prometheus on its own instead of using general Prometheus, random stuff. Anyway, I hate those cases. What's the point of semantic versioning if you don't use it?
Because it's Friday. Okay. Speaking of because it's Friday, the second review of Flux.
Yeah.
Are
this
you
is the
ready
first
to?
time- Ready to what?
I can't believe you actually used those 3 words.
I was wrong.
Actually,
Did I never say that?
I can't believe you used the one word, wrong. It just it's not possible for you to be wrong.
It's extremely hard to convince me that I'm wrong, but you need to have very good arguments. I had one person whom I'm not going to name show me very good arguments that I was wrong. And what did I do? I removed the video and spent 2 days making a new one. That's
And
how adults behave, right?
is it?
I hope so.
Okay. So
Is it not? Is it not?
it should be. So what was the biggest thing that you were incorrect about? I won't say wrong, but I will
Yes.
say
So
that you were misunderstanding.
So Flux, to begin with, Flux V1, the old version of Flux, did not allow you to have multiple repositories associated one way or another with a cluster, right? And that was a really bad thing. So we got Flux V2, and my initial read of the documentation led me to believe that yes, you can have multiple repositories that define your applications, but not multiple repositories that define environments. And by environments, I mean, let's say that you have staging and previews, or staging and production running in the same cluster. Going through documentation, I assumed that that's the case, couldn't figure it out, then said, yeah, you cannot have multiple environments. You can have multiple apps, but not multiple environments with the same instance of Flux. I was wrong, you can. And as I said in my message on LinkedIn, 25% of the blame goes to documentation. The rest is me.
Okay. So,
but Flux did a great job. I really must congratulate Stefan and the company on doing it.
So, how is your feelings? How are your feelings between Argo CD and Flux?
Very close. They're very close. Differences are not as big as people like to present. You know, you always present your things in a better light than it is. They're very, very close. Now there is. So I couldn't recommend one over the other, to be honest. The main advantage of Argo CD is that it has UI, and UI is absolutely awesome and said by a person who hates UIs, but actually I don't hate UIs for observing the state of something. I just wish that Argo CD never put that button that says create new application. Outside of that, it's absolutely awesome. Flux doesn't have a UI open source part of the project. On the other hand, Flux V2, which was released recently, is, let's say, very close to Argo CD, but it is designed in a way that is much more extensible. So I can guess that Flux V2 will now, if they're here, Flux V2, if everything goes fine, can now go with greater speed than Argo CD. So very close, but it might easily be not so close a few months from now, or half a year. Still, both are awesome. Don't switch from one to another because or this and that. Both are good tools.
So no huge differentiators based on use case.
No, I think that Flux might be a bit more powerful, and it's funny because Flux problem was with Flux v1 is that it was very opinionated, and that was sometimes restrictive in depending on what you want to do. And now it is more flexible than Argo CD. It went to other side, right? So it is more flexible than Argo CD, and I think you can do more stuff, more permutations of what you want to do with Flux than Argo CD. On the other hand, that bigger flexibility comes at the cost. It might take a bit more time to figure it out. Like you see, dumb guy over here had to repeat the exam. So learning curve might be slightly higher, but both of them are relatively fast to figure out. So, learning curve, if you say Kubernetes is steep and then you say, it takes 2 years instead of 1 year, but this is, it will take you 5 days instead of 4 days to figure it out. It's not that big of a deal.
So if you understand one, you're going to have confidence in learning the other.
Better if you don't understand one. Actually,
okay.
Part of the problems, and that happens all the time, at least to me, part of the problem is that, when you know one, then your brain is trying to apply some of the ideas from one to another. And I actually had to unlearn Argo CD to truly understand how Flux works. But that might be me, right? Kind of, I don't know. People are different.
Fair enough. Okay. Cool. What's the last little bit of news that we have for today? If you're not part of the Slack community, go sign up for that. That's scrolling right down there. If you haven't signed up for or subscribed to the channel, right underneath Victor, right over there, right over there. Go click click on the subscribe button, ring that bell. We're nudging up closer and closer to 300 now. It'd be nice to get to 300 by end of year. We'd appreciate that. Let your grandmother know while you're finishing up. It's like, hey, grandma, go subscribe to this thing. What's that subscribe thing? It doesn't matter. Just go do it. And Victor's Toolkit. Oh, wow, congratulations! You crossed 1,000.
Yeah, it's actually. 1,000 is not really a especially high number, but in this case, it is because basically the channel started 3 months ago. That's not really full. No, that's not true. That's not true. It started 3-4 years ago, but I started publishing for real 3 months ago. So I think that 2/3 of those subscriptions are within last 3 months, and then they're like 95% of views and all that stuff. So I count as it started in September, even though it existed a long time ago.
Yeah. And Vladislav just called out that we peaked today at 11. Yeah, we had 11 people live. Yes, people, if you're wondering, man, I can't get a lot of people on my channel. Doesn't matter. Or on my lives. It's like, doesn't matter if a lot of people are there. Are you there? That's enough. We actually recorded 3 podcast episodes this morning, since today is still a holiday, so I was able to cram some extra work in. Not day job work, but this job work. And we were talking a little bit about developer relations and things that people do, and it's just one of those things. Got to do work, got to show up.
Yeah.
But that's so you crossed 1,000 there. So I don't even have hours up here yet. I can pull it up because I don't even remember what the number was today. I looked this morning before one of my walk, I think. Let's see, what is it? I'll share it again. Yeah, this little machine is like, it's really grunting along. I'm having to redo some stuff.
You know who is the main culprit for your machine not being up to speed? Chrome.
Oh, it is definitely Chrome. If I could, well, actually, I could share my screen. You want to see what it
Just
is? Here.
don't open all the tabs at once. Open them one when needed. And
Oh yeah, well, I could, but then so here, let's do this for just a second. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen here. I'll show you behind the scenes just a little bit. Okay, so let's remove that one. Let me stop that screen. Let me share a screen, and let me just show this screen. This is going to be hard to see. So this is a 2011 MacBook Air. Yes, I said a MacBook Air. So I've got, and this is really small, so you can't see it, but 4 gig of RAM, so I'm using 3.5. I'm caching, I'm swapping. Firefox is #1 on memory right now. And then Chrome is further down, but if we take a look at CPU, Chrome is the one that's chewing all the CPU because that's what I'm sending up to StreamYard. So, but it's working.
By the way, the new Airs sound to be fantastic, man.
I've got a friend that is looking at getting one of the, actually, I've got a friend that's looking at getting one of the M1 laptops, not the Pro, but the Air.
Yeah, Air, exactly.
And my son-in-law is looking at buying the Mac Mini because he's a composer, so he does music. And I sent him a video the other day of somebody that had loaded up 1,000 plugins inside of Logic. And he does all of his work in Logic. I was like, holy cow. But I'm going to wait till somebody else gets one so then I can test out my software on it. Because I can't justify going there yet. Because there's enough development tools that are not working.
Oh, yeah.
That it's like, I did see that somebody got hacked and got Docker working. But there were a lot of other tools that just weren't working that I need on a day-to-day basis. And
it cannot be the main driver, but
no.
if there wouldn't be COVID and I would have too much money, more than I need,
yeah,
I would buy Air for travel, kind of.
Yeah, well, I would buy a Mac Mini for streaming, based on what I'm seeing now, because it looks to be pretty good. But as Dominic just said, it's the quality of the people that matters. Yes.
Oh, we are doomed to.
And we have no, not us. The people that are joining us. They're the high quality people. We're just the ruffians.
That's yeah.
Thanks, Dominic. Man, so what's going on? So it's still holidays in the U.S., and then we're getting ready to head into Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, all the holidays.
I love Thanksgiving, man. I love it.
Because all the U.S. people are off and you don't have to do anything?
Exactly. I can concentrate on real work, yes.
The downside to Thanksgiving for a lot of people, in case you don't know it, is this is also the time that many companies, if they're not retail, this is when they schedule all their upgrades. As they schedule all their upgrades on this weekend. If they're not retail. Or if they're not, there's one other... credit card companies also don't schedule time. It's because it's again, credit cards are retail. So, but that is that for this week. Is there anything else that we need to say for this week? Otherwise, I might go start editing another podcast.
Yeah, do that. I mean, last week was KubeCon, that was madness, and this week it's kind of like non-existent almost.
And reInvent starts. Has reInvent already started?
reInvent, I don't know when it starts.
Because they're doing something weird.
I'm going only to my own conferences where I need to speak. The rest I'm gonna watch on YouTube. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't know when it starts. I don't care anymore.
Well, that's the weird thing about KubeCon, right? Is their videos aren't going to YouTube for a while.
They are going later. Yeah.
Later. Go ahead, rant, please.
No, just stream conferences on YouTube, and that's it. That's all I want. Directly, no hopping and whatever other platforms they have.
People need to know how to do a conference. Go back to all the talks .online, which I think they've changed the domain to something else now. The one that Patrick Dubois did. That was perfect.
And it was in 3 weeks, man.
3 weeks.
24 hours or 48 hours. What was it? 24, right?
It was 24 hours, I think.
24 hours conference, multi-tracks, organized in 3 weeks or something like that.
A really short time. All done on the same platform we're using right now. None of these crazy conference platforms. But what do we know?
Not much.
No. I know that a MacBook Air with 4 gig of RAM is really pushing it right now to do what I'm doing. So I do know that much. But I had to test it.
So, Vladislav, what is your conf? I don't get his sentence.
No. Get a slot next week. Do you need a slot?
I don't know.
He says, talk about Flux versus Argo. Oh, dear.
Yeah, I can do that. Ping me, Vladislav.
And where do people ping you? Down in the Slack channel, right down there. Go sign up. That was a nice segue. Thank you.
Okay.
That's the one you attended in the past. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
All right, so we got that. Sorry, Vladislav, that came out wrong. I didn't mean for that to be flippant. Next week on the podcast, we speak with PJ Haggerty about you may or may not have heard of Mattermost before. It's a thing like Slack, Microsoft Teams, but you can self-host it. Right now, they're the only real player, I believe.
Typically, they offer a service as well. It doesn't have to be self-hosted. Yeah.
Right, and they do now offer a service. At the time we recorded the episode with PJ, the service had not come out. It is now out. But we titled this one, so it's not real surprising when you see it, Mattermost saves a 30-year-old D&D campaign, Dungeons & Dragons. You'll have to listen to the episode to totally understand the why of it. PJ was a very interesting guy to speak with. So that'll be out on Wednesday at 6 a.m. Eastern. I'll make sure it's really there this time. Anything else? We're going to cut everybody loose. I think it's time to... plus, it's right at the top of the hour. So everyone, have a great weekend. If you are in the U.S., enjoy the rest of your day off. If you have the day off, if you're working retail, thank you for working retail. If you're sitting in a hospital right now and you're a nurse watching this, I don't know why you would. Thanks for what you're doing. All of our first responders, thanks for what you're doing. Hey man, it's one of those kinds of years. Anything can happen.
If we reach to the point that actually nurses are watching us and not only engineers and nerds, then we are heroes, man.
Yes, I don't know. All right. So we will see everybody next week. Have a great weekend. Let me get all of my notes pulled up here because, hey, I'm not there yet. And we will talk to everyone again next week.